While money laundering has existed as long as people have committed crimes, Al Capone have modernized and revolutionized money laundering in ways that are still relevant nowadays. Still, Al Capone was never convicted of money laundering because money laundering was not a crime until decades later. My name is Julia. I'm an anti-money laundering specialist. If you want to support the channel, please consider liking, subscribing, leaving a message, you know the usual. Let's get to today's history lesson. Alphonse Gabriel Capone, Al, was born in New York in 1899. He was the son of Italian immigrants. Growing up in a rough Brooklyn neighborhood, he became acquainted with the gangster lifestyle at a young age. But it's in Chicago where he really built his criminal empire. Invited in Chicago by a criminal associate, Johnny Torrio, he joined and eventually led the Chicago outfit. Shortly before Capone's arrival in Chicago, the 18th Amendment of the United States Constitution was passed, prohibiting the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors. Prohibitionism made the fortune of Capone and the Chicago outfit that exploited the huge demand for illegal alcohol. Unlike typical criminals who preferred to keep a low profile, Al Capone's criminal empire flourished under the glare of public attention. Capone not only tolerated but embraced the spotlight, becoming a media sensation. He was frequently photographed, he granted interviews to journalists, and his charismatic personality even landed him on the cover of Time magazine in March 1930. In addition, Capone benefited from a public sentiment that saw the alcohol ban as a misguided and widely ignored law. Many otherwise law-abiding citizens viewed the ban on alcohol as a farce and continued to enjoy their drinks in defiance. To them, he wasn't just a criminal, he was a working-class hero who provided what the people wanted. This favorable public opinion, combined with his charismatic personality, helped Capone to thrive as a gangster celebrity. Capone and his associate also enjoyed a certain freedom of movement thanks to bribes to politicians, law enforcement officials, and other public figures. The tide turned against Al Capone following the notorious St. Valentine's Day massacre of 1929. Orchestrated by Capone's Chicago outfit against their rivals, the North Side Gang, the massacre was a calculated and ruthless display of power. On February 14, Capone's men gunned down 7 members of the North Side Gang in an execution-style killing. The brutal images of the massacre, showing the bodies of the victims line up against the garage wall, shocked the nation. This public horror dramatically shifted the perception of Capone from a somewhat romanticized figure who defied the unpopular prohibition law to a ruthless gangster whose violent methods could no longer be ignored. The 1987 movie The Untouchables portrays the downfall of Al Capone through the story of Elliot Ness, played by Kevin Costner, and his team known as the Untouchables. These agents earned their nickname from the press due to the reputation of integrity and resistance to corruption, refusing bribes while enforcing prohibition laws. However, recent sources suggest that some members of Ness' team may have been bribed, making them not so untouchable. The movie touches upon Al Capone's money laundering tactics. He employed established methods of money laundering, but with the unique circumstances of prohibitionism, he elevated these tactics to an unprecedented scale. Capone invested in legitimate businesses and shell companies that served as fronts, allowing him to integrate illicit profits from bootlegging. Capone further diversified his laundering methods by investing heavily in real estate, often using cash transactions or intermediary to avoid detection. Additionally, Capone and his associates utilized offshore bank accounts and engaged in cash smuggling across state lines and internationally to evade detection and taxation. Capone needed a team of accountants and lawyers to set up these transactions. Meyer Lansky, known as the mob accountant, used to wire money to brokers in Switzerland who would cover Capone's tracks and reinvest the money in legitimate businesses. In reality, Elliot Ness played a minor role in the downfall of Al Capone. The media of his time and subsequent portrayals have mythicized Ness due to his likable persona as a college-educated prohibition agent who conducted several raids, albeit only resulting in temporary disruption to alcohol distribution. The critical investigative work that led to Capone's downfall was primarily carried out by Frank J. Wilson, a forensic accountant. Wilson uncovered a crucial ledger linking Al Capone's name to illegal gambling proceeds, providing useful evidence for his conviction. The money laundering strategies used by Al Capone pose significant challenges for law enforcement trying to trace and disrupt Capone's illicit financial activities. Consequently, the U.S. Treasury Department pursued a different approach: tax evasion charges. Capone flaunted a lavish lifestyle, and he was believed to have amassed tens of millions of dollars annually from his illicit enterprises. Nonetheless, he didn't pay taxes for years throughout the 1920s. An important piece of evidence came from the ledger discovered by Frank J. Wilson, which, however, was not sufficient on its own. Authorities also leveraged a testimony from one of Capone's bookkeepers and scrutinized Capone's extravagant spending habits. While proving Capone's direct earning from illegal activities was challenging, authorities successfully demonstrated that his spending far exceeded his reported income, indicating possession of wealth beyond any legitimate explanation. This strategy ultimately led to Capone's conviction on tax evasion charges in 1931. Capone was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison, fined $50,000, which is $800,000 today adjusted for inflation, and made to pay $250,000 plus interest due on back taxes, which is $3.5 million today adjusted for inflation. A couple of years after Capone's conviction, due to the public discontent and the rise of organized crime, prohibition was repealed with a further amendment to the Constitution. However, this didn't stop the organized crime, which shifted to other illegal drugs. Al Capone has been mythicized as the originator of money laundering, with his alleged use of laundromat that gave rise to the term. But this is just a myth. Money laundering existed long before Al Capone, and he was never convicted of money laundering because this was not a crime until decades later. Criminals like Al Capone often outpace legal authorities that takes years, if not decades, to catch up. Myths surrounding Al Capone obscure the true story of his rise and fall. Media portrayals often highlight highly dramatic shootout and raids, while at the same time overestimating the actual effect that this action had in Capone's fall. At the same time, the crucial work of forensic accounting is underestimated. But it is understandable. It is much more thrilling to watch some cops busting down doors and raiding an illegal brewery compared to watching a group of forensic accountants quietly reviewing ledgers. Despite the proven success of financial investigation in Al Capone's story and in many other cases that follow, many police decision makers all over the world still prefer traditional detective police work because they believe that shadowing a suspect and waiting for them to slip up is the best way to fight crime. Instead, a better investment of public funds will be investing more in forensic accountants and financial investigators, because this type of operations, not only they are more cost effective, they also yield more and better results as they help disrupting the flow of funds and they help preventing further crimes from happening. Al Capone's fine for tax evasion was relatively low compared to the fortune that he put together through his criminal life. The US authorities also confiscated all the known possession of Al Capone, but we don't know if there are other assets that have not been able to be linked to Al Capone that remain in the possession of Capone and his family. After his release in 1939, he moved in a villa in Florida that he owned, where he spent the last years of his life, surrounded by his family and with the help of a pension paid by the Chicago outfit of $600 a week. Confiscation remains a critical aspect of criminal justice still nowadays. Many countries all over the world use conviction-based confiscation. This means that the prosecutor need to have a conviction for an individual, and then they need to link the possession and asset to that individual and demonstrate beyond reasonable doubt that those assets are the profit of criminal activities. Because this is a very high threshold of proof, it means that often criminals walk away with their illicit possession even after a conviction. Recognizing these challenges, some countries have adopted non-conviction based confiscation. With this type of confiscation, the court doesn't have to prove a conviction. Instead, it needs to determine that assets are linked to criminal activities at the balance of probability, which is a lower threshold of proof compared to beyond reasonable doubt. In this way, the focus shifts from a conviction, a guiltiness, to proving that assets are likely derived from criminal activity. Especially countries that have a long history of fighting organized crime, like the United States, have non-conviction based confiscation. But too many countries all over the world still use conviction-based confiscation. This means that criminals in these countries can walk away with their assets even after a conviction and after being incarcerated. This also means that their family and descendants continue to enjoy the wealth accumulated through criminal activities, perpetuating the cycle of crime. In some countries of the world, crime still pays. Thank you for sticking out till the end. My name is Julia from Total AML. You know what to do. Comment, like, subscribe. Also, give me a follow on LinkedIn where I post more about anti-money laundering. I'll leave you the link below in the description box. And I'll see you on the next one.